Well, Laura Kane, welcome to the journey. And I know it has been, well, it's probably been about a year since you have been on the journey, even though you and are spending a whole lot more time together in the past, especially the past six plus months. Laura, you had become part of the Shatter Our Silence board of directors. And then just most recently, we spent some time together as you get the opportunity to bring your program that I'm going to have you talk about out to California, Edwards Air Force Base out in California. But welcome to the journey. And for anyone who's new listening to the journey is a show that focuses on one part, it focuses on stories of individual who've had transformation in their life based upon some kind of setback or loss or something that may have happened in their life, and then not only what was that thing, what was that loss and setback, but then most important, what they learned from it about themselves, and then what are they doing with it now? And then we also do some reflections. So Laura, welcome to the journey. And why don't you tell us a little bit about, give us kind of for the new listeners, give us a little bit of update about your story and a little bit of background about that. And then, of course, your children and Zach as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me here, Kevin. And so, as Kevin stated, my name is Laura Kane. I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit organization based out of Rockford, Illinois, called Marshmallows Hope. And yeah, it's been a year since I was on the journey. We're coming up on the 1 year anniversary since I published my book called Lost to Darkness, Enlightened by Grace. And the last time I was here, we talked about that. So that was kind of cool that it's almost coming up on that year. As far as who I am married to an amazing person who's not only like he's my biggest cheerleader, but he's the greatest supporter I could have ever asked for. So I'm super blessed of being able to call myself his wife. Together we have 6 children in total. He has 3. We're like the Brady Bunch. He has 3 and I have 3. So he's got Anthony, Haley, and Liam. And then my 3 are Caitlin, Zachary, and Lincoln. And so together we're kind of like the Brady Bunch. And it's really neat.
Sure. And you guys have been together a while, but then just recently in the past year have gotten married, and that whole that has been another solidifying that partnership, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been together for 8 years now this month.
Mhm.
And we got married last October. October during COVID, we eloped. So it was kind of really cool, just the 2 of us.
Sure, nice. And your daughter, she just graduated from high school, correct?
She did. And I'm not sure how she's going to feel about me announcing it to the world, but I'm going to be a grandma. So
Congratulations.
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And so which is a very even when those time periods when we have those things occur, that they may come a little bit earlier than we think or out of some particular order. I think it is those things that are still a gift and still a blessing regardless of that.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely think that, of course, it came as a shock. She's so young. She literally just graduated high school, like you said, and now she's jumping right into mommyhood, but she's got an amazing support system. And we just found out it's a little boy. Yeah, so I'm super stoked about it. I can't wait to go shopping and, you know.
Sure,
So
absolutely. So, I'm trying to remember exactly what month it was, but I know that it was somewhere in either late fall, early winter. I had asked you to become part of Shatter Our Silence, and that's the nonprofit that I started as a result of my son and his classmates, struggling through 3 of their out of 100, 3 of their classmates that died via suicide. And I know that was how we originally met. When and I know you're going to get in the story of Zachary, but when Zach died, he was actually he was at Harlem, which was one of the schools that I graduated from, and then I used to work there. And that prompted, because they had struggled that year, had struggled with, because I believe that was in 18, right?
Right.
Yeah,
So
and they had three individuals in that calendar year that died from suicide. In the Gabe died in the winter, in January, I believe, right?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I
Yep,
think it was February
February.
actually.
Okay.
Hmm.
And then Liam died in the spring, and then Zachary died. And again, Harlem responded just like Rockford Christian had, in a way to try to, like, students were reeling, staff was reeling, um, but there's always room to do more. And I know that's how we originally met during that time period. So tell us a little bit. Yeah, why don't you fill us in a little bit about who Zachary is, and the impact that Zach had on the people that knew Zach, and then what happened from the best that you understand it to be, and then kind of what you've been doing now.
So my son Zachary was 14, and since I was 10 years old, honestly, like I used to be obsessed with the show Saved by the Bell. And Zachary Morris, I was gaga over that kid.
Mm.
And he, like, since I was 10, I always said, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to have a little boy named Zachary. And if you are familiar with the show, he was a lot like Zach Morris. Like, he was that goofball, very popular with the girls, really handsome, and truly had an amazing heart. Um, he was just, I don't know, he was fun, and we laughed a lot. We laughed a lot. He loved music. He was very talented, taught himself how to play the piano. But anyway, unfortunately, September 16th is going to be 3 years since he took his own life. Um, I'll never know, I'll never have that solidified reason as to why things happened the way they did. I mean, unfortunately, our family, we went through a lot. When the kids were younger, we survived domestic violence. Unfortunately, the kids, were victims of abuse. So some of those traumas, I believe, were definitely contributing factors to his decision. And he was fighting depression. From everything that I know now, definitely fighting depression, but he was, protecting me from it.
Mhm.
I never knew, you know.
And
um
and when you say protecting you from it, what, yeah, kind of go into that a little, like, in what ways do you think, now looking back in it, in what ways do you think Zachary was protecting you from it, and, like, how was he protecting you from it?
well, so at the time I was a single mom, of, a single mom, 3 kids, and I feel like Zachary just had like this weight on his shoulders. Like, of course he had to be like the man of the house.
Mhm.
And it was always, he was always the kid that, like, he would cook dinner, to try to like help me take the burden off of me. Before I got home from work, like, he and Kate would cook dinner, or like he always tried to be helpful and always tried to make sure that I was happy, and for whatever reason, right? But the reason why I say he protected me from his pain is because after he died, um, when I spent time with my kid, Kevin, he was always smiling. He was always the happy kid, right? But after he died, it was when I truly started to see a kid that was really hurting. And he shared that via social media with his friends. He would have messages with his friends, but he never opened up to me about it. And what was even, what was devastating to me is we talked about everything. My kids and I have always had that type of relationship, but I truly feel that because he was hurting, it's as if he didn't want to transfer that pain onto me. So he would rather hold it in and not talk about it than say, hey, mom, I'm going through this and I need help, you know? And I just feel like that's a common thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I know you and I've had many conversations about this, especially even over, especially the last month or 2 months or so. But that silence, right? That individuals who are struggling in the depression, there's this silence that comes, embarrassment, shame. Maybe I'm thinking I'm going to try to protect them from, I don't want to burden mom with this, those types of things. And so it wasn't like he was completely silent. It sounds like he was sharing it with his friends, but maybe his friends didn't know what to do with it, or didn't
Mhm.
know the impact or how serious it was, or to what degree it was. But obviously, if he would have been sharing those things with you, that would have been different.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's really common. I mean, as you stated, we've talked about it many, many times. And I've learned, prior to this happening to me, I was not educated in this topic at all. So I have learned that, yeah, kids often don't know the seriousness of it. They don't know, you know, they, they don't know what to do with it. And I think that that's what's amazing about Shatter Our Silence. It's incredible that you are taking the initiative to educate these kids on the do's and don'ts, right? On the, you need to take this seriously, and you need to encourage them to seek help or reach out to somebody to get them help. Because I mean, I think that's an incredibly important mission that you have and that you do, and I'm grateful for that. Because kids don't know, they don't. And I think that it's really common to kind of feel like, kind of like the boy who cried wolf. You know,
Mhm.
it's as if they just don't take it seriously anymore. They hear it all the time from so many kids and so many of their peers that to them it's like, oh, it's just another thing that they say to get attention. And it's not really attention seeking.
Yeah. Well, and I think, even for us as for myself as an adult, for most adults that I talk to, even from an aspect of adults that are professionals in the mental health, world, when someone's talking to me about uh, death ideation or hopelessness or being suicidal, there's an energy that comes up, and I've been trained in this and educated in this, and it wasn't until I even went deeper into that education did I can't say it because it's not true that I don't feel comfortable with it. I can't say that I feel comfortable because it's like saying to an EMT when someone's coding, that they feel comfortable with that. I don't think an EMT feels comfortable with that. They know what to do and they've practiced doing it, but my guess is they don't feel comfortable, as if it's, well, just a stroll in the park, because it's not. It's real, and it is a life and death situation. And so you're right. That's the primary focus of what Shatter Our Silence is the training is to help the friends of and the significant others of and the professionals that work with them what to do when someone comes to you when they're in that darkness. And so for you, and I'm so sorry that you've had to experience this, and I know, the ripple effect that this has had on you and your family. But beyond that, that's also, you found out that, after Zach died, obviously being a mom, you started doing your own, trying to put the pieces together, trying to figure things out. Tell us a little bit about what happened, for you after Zach died,
Also,
specifically with his friends. Yeah.
yeah. So, in my darkest time, I would take my kids to school, drop them off, and then I would come home and I was in like my own deepest depression, right? So I would lay in bed, and I would look through Zachary's social media. And I feel like it was kind of an obsession to try to get the answers and try to figure out why, right? But when I would go on his social media, I would post motivational messages to encourage kids to not do what Zachary did, because unfortunately I feel like suicide can often be romanticized, you know, and I wanted kids to kind of just know from my son that, hey, he made a choice, he made a mistake, but please don't do this, you know. And so anyways, by me posting these motivational messages encouraging these kids to live, they started reaching out to me, and they started talking to me, and just their connection with Zach was so deep, you know. They could relate to his pain, and that led to them opening up to me about their own pain, their own depression, their own thoughts. And it's kind of like we helped each other, you know, because they would help me get through my day in my deepest pain, you know, by just me talking to them and encouraging them. And I would help them by just being somebody that was there for them to like listen to them. But then it went even a step further. Parents of kids who had like attempted or were on the verge of an attempt, you know, they started reaching out. Do you have any idea what I can do? Do you have any resources? Like, who can I contact? How can I help my child? Because they started seeing me on social media, also posting about it, you know. And so that's how Marshmallows Hope, which is my nonprofit organization, was born. Was just, you know, I started picking up these kids, taking them out to eat, you know, talking to them one on one, meeting with parents for coffee, trying to put our minds together as to how we could help their kids, or, you know, just be somebody that would be like a mentor, or somebody that was like an unbiased friend that the kids could have as an additional support to talk to, you know, because kids don't really talk to their parents. Again, I feel like it's they're trying to protect the parents from their own pain, just like my Zach, right? And so they feel more comfortable talking to somebody other than mom and dad. They don't want to burden their parents, they don't want to disappoint them. And for whatever reason, their pain, their depression, their anxiety, that's how it makes them feel, that they're going to be a burden, which is a lie,
Mm.
you know. But
Yeah, and as you know, we talk about that all the time, that when an individual's in that darkness, that the depression, the anxiety, the trauma, you know, takes on not a literal voice. I don't mean to suggest that, but takes on this this thought process that distorts truth and slants things a certain way, and it's always toward that negative, right? It's always toward, and so negative and darkness go hand in hand, and so they're like partners in the aspect. So sh- she won't understand. I don't want her to. She already got too much on her plate already. um she won't you know, she won't listen, or I'll go and it won't make a difference, it'll just make it worse, you know, all those things. And so as so I'm partly curious about this, and I don't know if we've even talked about this before, but you had mentioned that Zach had, either directly or encryptically, right? Used kind of phrases, um, when he was in this darkness, you know, before the 16th of September. He was talking to people, posting things or whatever. Were those individuals that he was sharing that with, or commenting, that you saw that were tied to that, were those individuals who reached out to you, or were there different friends or different people that knew Zach that reached out to you? Was it, or was it both?
yeah, it was a mixture of people.
Okay.
So you know, sadly, like when he passed away, there was a lot of guilt. There was
Okay.
a lot of guilt from kids that were aware that he was having these issues, you know. And then it became kind of I would try to comfort these kids, you know, like, hey, I don't want you to live with that guilt ever. Like, this
Mhm.
was a decision that my child made, but, you know, yes, learn from this, but don't carry that weight. It's not your weight to carry, you know. And so it would spiral then into deeper conversations. But yeah, and then there were random strangers that, you know, from out of state, like different states, different countries. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I say hundreds of people began to reach out to me. It was literally like, if you look at my Facebook, I think the maximum friends you can have is like 5,000. I literally only had 100 friends on Facebook before my son died. And that was just my immediate like friends and families, people, people that I physically knew. And after my son died, it was like it just went into this crazy spiral effect to the point where at some point Facebook was like, you can't accept any more friends, you know, which was kind of, I mean, it's kind of cool, but I mean, it's very cool. I shouldn't say kind of, it's very cool that my son's story has impacted this, this magnitude, these many people all around the globe. It's
Sure,
pretty.
sure. Well, amazing from that aspect of it, and I know that yourself and other individual, other moms, just that we know, right? Just in our immediate, in the
Mhm.
Rockford area, Phyllis and Xavier and different moms, and those are just the ones who are in the forefront, in the eyes of the public, doing things. I know there's a lot of other parents, moms and dads, behind the scenes doing things and trying to help out, and trying to make a difference, or just telling their story, or supporting things. But so tell us a little bit. Well, tell us a little bit about Marshall's Hope. Tell us how you came up with the name, and then tell us a little bit about what is the what's the mission and the purpose of Marshmallow's Hope, and then what have you guys been doing, and then we'll jump onto the Heroes program.
Okay. So when, you know, after working with these kids or just hanging out with them, I wanted to do something greater. And I kept thinking, okay, how can I raise funds? Because, I was taking them out to eat and I was paying for everything. I was funding everything. And then it got to a larger magnitude and I needed help. And there was a great lack in our community, sadly, where there aren't a lot of programs for kids, especially the teenagers, and so anyhow, I started looking into how do I do this, and so the nonprofit came about, and when I was trying to think of marketing it, right, I was like, well, if I call it Zachary Foundation or Zachary Burkholz, like that's, I feel like there's a bunch of Zacharys in the world, and there's maybe other organizations already that go by his name. And so I wanted to honor my son in a unique way. And then so I went all the way back to when he was probably around 9 or 10, and we were watching this movie with Will Smith. And in the movie, Will Smith expressed that his friends called him mellow marshmallow, and then he said, but because I'm soft on the inside. So in the movie, Will Smith was like this badass, right? Like he was really strong and all this stuff, but then he let his like guard down, and you could see that he was a really compassionate kid or guy in the and whatever in the character. And so anyways, somehow that spiraled into me calling Zachary Marshmallow. It was actually Jonathan that came up with that nickname for him. He was like, hey, just like Zach, and so we started calling him Marshmallow, and Zach hated it. He used to get so mad. That's such a dumb name. Don't call me that. But then once he became a teenager, he would laugh about it. You know, that's such a ridiculous name. And I could just hear his laugh every time I think of Marshmallow. So
Mhm.
that's how we came up with Marshmallow. And then Hope, hold on, pain ends.
Mhm.
That's my mission is I want people who are hurting to know that they're not alone, that they don't have to suffer in silence, that, you know, even though they're feeling hopeless right now in the midst of their darkness, if they can just hold on a little longer, that pain that they currently feel will end, and it'll become manageable. And so that's why it's called Marshmallow's Hope. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
So in as as we've talked many times, and we've done some workshops together, you know that idea of hold on, pain ends is the belief that I have, and the belief that we have, is that when a person's in that darkness, because of the depression lying to them, if we can just help them hold on long enough to build in some time, build in some space, um, so that we can, another day happens, or we get them into the right, either facility, the right medication, or the right counsel, or the right situation to help alleviate some of that pain. Almost everybody we've worked with doesn't want to die. They don't really want to succumb to that darkness.
Mm.
So we just need to help them hold on, right, until that pain is alleviated. May not go away completely, but it's
Right.
alleviated enough so that they can look at doing life differently, and that life can be different than it currently feels when they're in that deepest darkness. So I think that's a great, hold on, pain ends. I think is a great example. Unfortunately, and so we just have to be transparent and honest. We don't know how long it's going to take, right? We don't know how long temporary is. We don't know how long it's going to take for that pain to get alleviated. But we do know it will. It's just don't we
Yeah.
just don't have a timeline for it. Um, so, so with that, I know that Marshmallows does a handful of different things. You provide financial resources for certain things, and then you also then ventured into starting an initiative. So, tell us a little bit about some of the things that you guys do besides just raising awareness. What are some of the things that you actually do?
Well, so when, as I mentioned before, I was a single mom, and it came down to now not only did I have my child who was dead, but I also had to come up with the money to figure out if I could bury him or if I would cremate him. And honestly, Kevin, like I had never in a billion years in my entire life thought about having to bury my child. And so, long story short, when it came down to it, it was the funeral expenses were astronomical, and again, I was a single mom. So I didn't really have a choice. And so part of what Marshmallows does is we come in and we assist, parents of kids who have died by suicide, and we want to help incur that cost for them so that they don't have to worry about that, because it was just the most awful feeling. So that's part of what we do. We also provide resources, like we refer kids to KP counseling, which we're grateful to have you, by the way, the
You're
services
welcome.
that you guys provide for these kids. I mean, so our goal is to, like you're saying, be the light in someone's darkness. That's what we want to do, is we want to, help rehabilitate these kids who feel that there's no way out, right? Or there's no way to get better, but we refer them to counseling agencies so that they can get better. They can work on bettering their mental health. But the biggest mission that was put in my heart was to give these kids, my focus had always been the youth. And so I wanted to provide the youth with, again, that additional person that they could feel comfortable or build a relationship with, that they could talk to, to have some sort of outlet other than mom and dad or their siblings, somebody outside of the household that, number one, that they could look up to, they could open up to. And so I came up with this program called Hero Mentors. And HERO stands for help, encourage, reach, and overcome. So the person that we pair them up with, it's just a friend that they're going to go out. They're not trained professionals. They're not counselors. It's just, an unbiased, building a relationship mentor that's there for that child. And so that was always like the vision of Marshmallows, is I wanted to provide this outlet, because my son had a mentor. And I remember the positivity that that relationship gave Zach in that short period of time that the mentor was in his life. And so the program was kind of modeled after their relationship.
Mhm.
And, you know, then it just, during COVID, I again suffered the loss of suicide on a different level. So, like, through me helping parents of kids who are suicidal, or things like that. Like, unfortunately, I've also come across a lot of moms like myself who are hurting and need that additional support, right? But somebody else's child dying, even though, yes, it hurt me, right? It didn't affect me to the magnitude of a personal friend of mine losing her child to suicide. Because again, I guess it was that personal connection, right? And so, unfortunately, during COVID, when that happened, my friend's son was a military veteran. And at that point, it was put in my heart, like, what can I do? And I started looking into like the military, the active duty soldiers, suicide rates, and then the veteran rates. And it was like, okay, it's time. What can I do? But even though that was put in my heart back in March during COVID, I didn't have like an idea of what I could even potentially do. Right. So we fast forward to this year. There was an airman in California. He actually happens to be my sister's husband's brother. So my sister's brother-in-law. He reached out to me because, sadly, he had lost a comrade or a friend at the air base where he's stationed to suicide. And he just wanted to be that light for that friend's mom. He saw that she was really hurting. And so he calls me up and he says, hey, I know you wrote a book. Do you think that it would help her? Can you please mail her a copy? And so I wrote her a letter and I was like, I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. I know your pain. Here's a copy of my book. But then as he and I started to talk, it became so much more than that. And he started to share with me that they had been impacted by suicide so much in that base that they even had to like shut down operations for an entire day. And at that point, I was, here's my confirmation. I'm not waiting anymore. Like, who are the heroes? The military. I mean, so anyways, I started thinking of our hero program. How could we incorporate the hero program to not only help the youth in our communities, but also servicemen and women and veterans? And so, this airman hooked me up with like the higher ups in the military base. And I mean, you were a part of that. We went and we launched the hero program. But the way that we are presenting the hero program to these people is, anybody can be a hero mentor. And the reason why we did it that way is because we know that airmen, especially, or military personnel, aren't going to reach out for help because of the stigmas that surround mental illness. And so by us just simply pairing them with, a youth Zao, as we call it, a Zachary of the world, they will be given a protective factor. And if you want to explain, because you're the pro, you can totally explain what a protective factor is.
Sure. Yeah. So when we think of an individual, when we think of someone, we think of two different aspects. The risk factors in a person's life are the things that make them vulnerable or susceptible to going into that darkness and feeling hopeless and suicidal. And those are the risk factors, and that could be anything that previous trauma, current relationship, feeling stuck, feeling they can't get out of it, unsuccessful attempts of being able to get help, for what, either because resources don't know where to get resources, financial reasons, or just maybe a bad match. Or there may be even prior attempts of taking their own lives. These are all risk factors that we know leads someone to be more susceptible, more vulnerable. The more protective factors is to balance out the risk factors. So a protective factor could be, it could be a family itself, a family member. It could be religious beliefs. It could be the person's having a pet, or it could be that I am involved with something greater than myself, and that even though I'm in pain and I don't see anything that's ever good going to come out of my pain, but I have this person who needs me. And so this idea of having these risk factors, that even though I don't think I have anything to live for, I know that I can't do this too, or I don't want to leave, I don't want to abandon this person, I don't want to leave this person. And so that combats that lie when someone's in the darkness. And the more protective factors that a person has, or that we as individuals have, the more that we can balance out and hopefully weigh the scales so that we have more of the protective factors than we have of the risk factors. Did that sound familiar when we talked about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's amazing about the hero program, right? So when somebody, because I mean, so if these guys, these military guys, the servicemen and women, they don't, they aren't going to feel comfortable reaching out, but they know that they're getting into the program. They're volunteering to be the mentors for these kids who are already struggling with depression, anxiety, suicidal ideations, or have been victims of abuse. Like they're already, they know that they're supposed to be that example. And so my hope is that when they are in that darkness, they think of that child like, hey, they're already having thoughts of suicide. What is it going to do to them if I take my own life? And that is my hope for this program, is that those thoughts will, you know, provide that, you know, just, I don't know, that ability to keep living for both of them.
And so at the ultimate end, at the ultimate aspect of it, it's to help the mentee, help the youth from a standpoint if they happen to be in that hopelessness and darkness, and it's also to help the mentor. But there's so much more that can come out of that relationship. There's so much more that they can experience together that they may not have necessarily that they would have experienced if they wouldn't have been part of it, right? Another perspective, someone that doesn't have to care about me but cares about me. And when they go and maybe the mentee wants to play some go skydiving or zip lining, and the mentor goes, there's no way, I'm afraid of heights, but maybe they conquer their own fear. So it's a win-win for both sides. I imagine though the airmen probably wouldn't be scared of heights, or they would have somehow gotten screened out anyways. So, well, Laura, I think I know you're stretched, right? I mean, this idea of initially the whole intent and purpose was for this to be local, and really it was a grassroots to do it locally. And then because as we would talk about it, you get a knock on the door, the spiritual door, and it led you to a half a country away, introducing this program. So logistically, obviously there's challenges in that, but those are those things that we talk about, that when we're doing the right thing, when you're doing the right thing, the impossible is possible, right? And so I want to kind of, as we get ready to wrap our episode up today, I know that you are going to be joining me, not only obviously as continue to help me on the board of SOS, but on the end of this month, on the 30th of September, you are going to be our featured speaker, our guest speaker, at our annual fundraiser. And what Shatter Our Silence is that does is it goes and we're strictly about raising awareness and education. So we don't do kind of like with your group, or teen group Hope, or with Xavier's group, or some of the things that Phyllis does. We are strictly about awareness and education. We don't do any of the intervention or pre-intervention aspect of it. So it's just strictly education. But there's times when schools or churches may not have, or even organizations may not have the funding to have us come out and speak. And so that's really what we raise money for, as well as like this month, we're doing intentionally doing a lot of public service announcements, commercials, and so that costs money to make those videos and distribute them. And so it's really this fundraiser is our primary way of raising funds to support that, those initiatives of awareness initiatives as well as education initiatives. And you're going to be coming, and you'll be our featured speaker at the annual fundraiser at Labardi Club. Um, Tell us a little bit about how you envision that night going for on your part of the night going, and what could people, if they take the opportunity to come, we will tape it, and so that we will then put it on, put it online afterwards. But if they do have the opportunity to come and be part of that, what and don't give all your secrets away, but what would be some of the things they could expect?
Well, delicious food for
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
No. But no, I mean, of course, I'm going to share my personal story. And I believe that our story is a story of hope. But more importantly, Kevin, I mean, I feel like SOS is the key to prevention. You know what I mean? Even though you don't do the same types of services that we do, I wasn't educated in these topics before it happened to me. Suicide doesn't discriminate. It does happen to you. Like, it can happen to you. And that's what I really think that people need to come and listen to. They need to be proactive and something like this, right? And SOS, by you educating people, I mean, education is the key to prevention. I preach that all day long. Like, if I could ever go back in time, to before my child passed away, I would have educated myself about the important topics of mental illness and suicide and depression and so on and so forth. And so that's why I'm passionate about being a part of SOS. And I'm so honored that, not only do I get to be a part of it as a board member, but I also get to now be a part of it. I'm honored that you have asked me to speak. But I feel like, again, it's a hopeful message. But I think that it'll really give people an insight to how important the mission for Shatter Our Silence truly is. So I encourage anybody and everybody to not only come and enjoy the amazing food, come hear our story, but take it even further than that. Start educating yourselves. Educate yourselves about how you can be the light in somebody else's darkness. So
Perfect. Well, Laura, I'm looking forward, even though I have obviously heard your story and what you're doing with it, and what you're doing with marshmallows and with the hero program, and for the Zacharies of the world, the Zows of the world. But I'm looking forward to that evening. As you said, it's going to be an opportunity for individuals to come to network, to be able to. This will be a group of individuals that are going to come together and all have a shared common interest of how to support and how to be a light in that darkness. And so if we have 100 people or 150 people there that day, I think of like when I used to work security at concerts, right? If you just have one lighter, going in the midst of a big arena, okay, we can see it. But if we have 100 of those or 150 of those lights, we can actually illuminate in the darkness. And so that's the invitation. You have a phenomenal story, what you've learned and how you've evolved through this by listening and being, as we would say, being obedient to God's nudging, sometimes pushing, or the hard knocks on the door, and you walking through those doors. I've appreciated you being part of my journey, being here on the show, the journey, but more importantly, in the midst of your pain, that you have continued to keep Zach's story living. And as you've shared many times, Zach is living within you and everyone through his story. So thank you again. What's the best way for people to be involved with Marshmallows, to get a copy of your book? What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
they can just go directly to the Marshmallows Hope website, which is www.marshmallowshope.org. And or we're on Facebook. You can like us on Facebook. We're on Twitter, which is Hope for Z, and Instagram, Marshmallows Hope. So any of those means you can contact me, all the emails and everything, that there's a way to directly get in touch with me. And then my personal email is laura@marshmallowshope.org as well.
Perfect. Well,
So
Laura, I know we're going to be doing some work up until the end of the month, up until the 30th, but looking forward for you to share your story and share some of your resources and your vision of where and how you want to be a light in others' darkness this coming 30th. And for anybody who's listening who wants to either attend or support either Marshmallows, that's marshmallowshope.org, or if you want to attend the event, you can go to shatteroursilence.org, and they are still we still have a handful of tickets left to for the dinner. And we have limited capacity. Some of it's because of the venue, some of it's because of social distancing, but there are some seats still available. And so if people do want to attend, please contact shatteroursilence.org. So Laura, thank you again for everything that you're doing. Thank you for being a part of being in my life and being part of our community, but our community as broad. So thank you.
thank you for having me on here, Kevin.
As always, if for some reason anything about today's story, Laura's story, or what anything we talked about, if you need anything, feel free to put that in the comments. If it's even more, you can contact the suicide hotline, or you can contact crisis text line at 741-741. Again, please share this message, this episode with others, because you never know who may need to hear this. Again, look forward to being with you next week.